So in Galatians 3:28, the Apostle Paul says something really interesting. He says that there is no Jew nor Gentile, nor free nor slave, nor male nor female in Christ, but all are one in Christ. The interesting thing about this is because if you could think of a long table and people sitting at different parts of the table trying to find significance by where they rank themselves with prestige and pedigree and credentials, Paul is removing that. He's saying in Christ, you're significant because of Christ, not because of your pedigree, not because of your resume, not because of your credentials, not because of how good of a job you do at what you do. It's because you're in Christ. He says all are one in Christ, that there's no prejudice in his love, that all are equally loved. And so he's wanting to remove us from taking on the labels in life that we would otherwise use to define our worth. The things we would use, whether it's I'm a worship leader, or I'm a pastor, or I'm a business owner. So therefore I find my worth in how good of a job I do at those things. So, which is really scary, because if you begin to find your worth in how good of a job you do, you could begin to be disqualified from God's love. And you realize if I'm disqualifying myself from the love of God, that means at some point I've been trying to qualify myself. I've been trying to do things that get God's love for me and define me. And so when that's in place, I actually don't let the love of God have its way in me. It's as if I actually can't embrace someone because I hold things in my hands, and that itself keeps me from a full embrace of someone. I hold my titles, my positions. These things are defining me. And when they define you, you cannot let them go. You can't, because when you let them go, your inner world starts to crumble. You start to feel insignificant. You start to feel like you're in the shadows. You start to feel like you're not loved. You start to feel like you don't matter anymore. And then everything becomes, how do I get back into the light? How do I get back out of the shadows? How do I get back in the eyes of people? How do I then get the fame and accolades and accomplishments that then will define me and give me worth? I'm living by what I can do. And I'm defining love by how good of a job I do what I do. And so Christ comes into the equation by eliminating that. Paul later says that in Christ, we are a new creation, and that we live, move, and have our being in him, and that it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So my definition of my existence is through Christ, that I am loved just as Christ was loved from the Father. And that the life I live by faith in the Son of God, which means that the life I have now, I define by Christ. I define it by him giving himself for me. My worth is not defined by how good of a job I do on a Sunday morning. I'm a pastor, so if I preach, my worth isn't defined by how good of a job I preached, or how good of a counseling meeting I had, or how great of a blog post I wrote. It's not about how many likes I get, or how many retweets I get, or how many followers I have in life. My significance and my importance is not boiled down to those things. It is boiled down to the fact that Christ defines me and loves me, and that's really important. And so the process for us is that we must live with our identity in Christ, that we no longer rank ourselves. You see, the interesting thing when we rank ourselves and we don't define ourselves from Christ or by Christ is that we have to protect that. And to protect that, we have to make sure we lower others. You see, Saul and David is an interesting example of this, because when David started to get praise from the people, Saul started to question whether David would take everything. And when he started to do that, it said he viewed him with suspicion from that day forward. Saul's eyes were now suspicious of David, who was once fighting for him and loving him. So Saul could not allow David to be significant, because Saul found significance in what the praises of people were offering him. So when David started to get these songs written about him, these praises coming his way, when David started to get this, Saul couldn't handle it. And so then from that moment on, Saul starts to hunt him down. You see, we have to throw spears and hunt down those that are getting significance in life, or just getting favor, getting an opportunity in the light where someone's praising them for what they did. If I live by being valued by the praises of people, I cannot praise someone, because then I'm giving away something that I need to keep in order to feel valuable and important. So it's as if someone, if you're a worship leader, if you're someone on a worship team, it's when someone does a really good job, I can't actually give them praise. I can't actually say you did an amazing job, because that makes me feel like I'm less than, because I'm defining myself by what I do. So if I give them favor, if I give them praise, I'm lowering myself, and that's scary for someone who defines themselves by what they do. So I have to come against you. I have to do that to protect myself. Or I could choose to live a different way. I could choose to live through Christ. By then, I no longer define myself by labels of how good I do in the public or how good I do in people's eyes, but I'm defined by Christ. And in that, I can love people freely. I can give praise away freely, because I'm not concerned that I'm not going to get some. I'm not concerned that there's not enough food at the table. So if I don't eat all the food myself, then I won't be taken care of. I have to trust that I will be taken care of and that I'm loved through Christ. So if you're finding yourself in a place where, you know what, I feel insignificant if I give up my position, or if I give up my title, if I give up being praised by people, if I feel insignificant, and that's a good pointer. It's a good sign that you are finding your worth there. So it's time for you to actually lay down, not physically and say, quit your job. It's time for you to actually lay down in your heart what you have found value in outside of God. Whatever it may be, if it's your job, it's your position, it's how much money you make, it's how good of a job you are at this, whatever it may be, you have to begin to lay it down at the altar of Christ's love so that you can embrace him openly and freely, not with your credentials, not with what you do, because that's what Paul's talking about. He's saying all these people want to label themselves, and in labeling themselves, they want to create ranks and pedigrees and prestige so that they can begin to get worth and value. But Paul's saying all of you are loved by God. Why do you need these to find worth and value when it's freely given to you by Christ? It's like trying to earn something that's just so free and available to you that you trust more in your work instead of Christ's work. So if that's for you, if you're feeling like, oh man, I actually really need to live off people's praises, I really need to live off what I'm doing. If I'm not doing a good job, I go down into the gutter. Then I'm telling you right now, you need to lay down your need to feel significant by what you do and pick up a significance in Christ.